Ahoy there, SketchUp fans. Look, hopefully this will be a relatively painless and hopefully reasonably quick tutorial just showing you how to make windows, simple windows for your SketchUp building projects. You can use a very similar process actually for doors as well. I'm just using SketchUp for web, the freebie version, the new freebie version from the good folks at SketchUp. Exactly the same process can be used if you happen to use the Pro version of SketchUp. All right, so let's get cracking. So the style of window I'm going to make is just a fairly simple thing. We have a cavity in our wall, and the windows I've got here are a pretty simple arrangement. If I just hide the wall for a moment. Righto, they are really nothing more than an outer frame, okay, and then inside frames to represent the parts where the basically the glass is held, okay. So we might attempt to make one of these ones here, which is a simulation of a sliding window, okay. All the other ones I've got on here are basically similar. Even if you've got like an awning window or something here, it's kind of using the same process, an inside frame and an outside frame. Just whilst we're looking at it, we can look at things like the doors. Okay, and you'll see even a more complex looking door like this thing is once again the same process. I've got an outside frame and a sort of, in this case, 4 internal frames. So the process for making all these is identical. Right, let's get cracking with this. So just go and bring back all my walls. Righto, so let's just say we want to make a window like this one, and I'll plonk it on the front wall here just as a demonstration. Obviously you should be working off some kind of dimensions, so I'll simulate that, and let's just say I wanted to put a window that was smack in the middle of this bedroom wall in here, right? So, and I just want to work from the outside surface to do this. No particular reason, I could have done it from the inside, but I'll just work on the outside because it's easier to see. So I'm going to start by grabbing a guide, dragging it along the top there, just so I can see a reference point for where that internal wall would extend to if I could see it on the front surface there. All right. And I'm going to drag a second guide, pardon me, and then to infer to that guide that I had previously, and that shows me just a reference point for where that internal wall will be. Now I did that so that I can then work out what is the width there, okay, which is 4060 millimeters, and I just want to get halfway because I want to put the window smack in the middle of that space. So I'm just going to drag this second guide to anywhere, type in 4060, then / and then 2, which means divide by 2. Okay, so 4060 divided by 2, and there's our middle point. Okay. The windows I want to make, all my windows on this particular model are 2100 high, so I'm just going to drag a guide, once again, drop it anywhere up there, type in 2100, pardon me, and there's my height for my windows. And again, if I'm just making it consistent with this window over here, this window was 1800 wide by 1200 high. Okay, so I'm just going to put in some guides to represent that. Okay, so I'm going to go off the center line. So I want it 1800 wide. So that means it's going to be half of 1800, okay, which is 900. Okay, and again, if you are working with an unusual measure, you can't work out the maths, you do the method I just used previously. So that's 1800 / 2. And we'll drop it exactly in that sort of half of that measure for you. Okay, so we're starting to get the dimensions we need. And finally, I'm just going to drag a guide off this one, which is 1200, because that's how deep the window is. So that's the space just there that I'm going to work with. Righto, and I'm now just going to, I need to basically interrupt the geometry of the walls, okay, because I want to knock a hole in first for the cavity. And when I click on this, I can see I've got those walls grouped because I'm getting blue lines right around that, which reminds me that it's grouped. That's a good thing. Not such a good thing though if I attempt to just simply draw a rectangle on that and pull a hole, because it's grouped, so it's not going to let me interrupt that geometry. Okay. So what I've got to do is I have to get into the group edit mode for the walls. So to do that, I'm just going to double click, and that lets me in to the group edit mode, and I can tell that I'm in group edit mode because two things happen. All the other items, all the other objects that are not part of that group have been greyed out, so the doors, etc., these parts. And the other thing that I can see is I can now click on the different surfaces of the walls, and they're coming up as separate things, so that means I'm in group edit mode. Right, I've got that front surface selected. I'm going to draw a new rectangle over the space where my window needed to be, okay, which is there. I'm going to pre-select it, hit P for the push-pull tool, and drag that through. Now, if you have any problems with getting it to knock a hole like that, okay, because it should work just by pushing it all the way through, a tip for that, if it's being troublesome, is when you go to push-pull that, to start to push-pull, and then as you've got your mouse held in, just go up and touch that inside edge there, because in this case that's going to represent the other side of that face. Okay, so again, just to show what we're doing here, I'm trying to push-pull that to go all the way through to this inside sort of wall and knock it out, right? So sometimes, for reasons that will remain unknown to the mystical world of SketchUp, it sometimes won't do that, all right? So as I said, one way to absolutely ensure that it works is to go and just touch that inside edge that I can see up the top there, right? And there it is. Finally, another way to do that, of course, is just to know the depth that you're trying to cut through, right? So it's this particular wall is 230 millimeters thick. So if you just start push-pulling anywhere, type 230, and that will also knock that all the way through. Okay, so there's our cavity. All done. Right here. Now, I do not want to now start making my frame directly in this group, right? Because if I do that, it's going to interrupt, once again, the geometry that I've got on this wall. I just want to leave that as a cavity. So I'm going to click away from everything to get out of group edit mode. I can see that it's back into normal mode now because there's my blue line, so all is good, and I'm ready to keep working. I'm finding these guides distracting now. There's just too many of them, so I'm going to delete them. I don't need them anymore. And they're gone. Okay, so I just use the delete guides over here in the little sort of, I don't know what they call that, the display menu they call that now. Righto. And on to making the frames. So as I said, I'm going to sort of model it on this style I've been making here, which is an outside frame and then two inside frames. So to start that, I'm just going to add just a rectangle that goes right across that space. Okay. And then what I need to do is I need to put a thickness on this. Okay, and the reason for that is if I just hide my walls again, you can see on this sample one over here, that external frame has got a thickness of, I think I've used about 90 on that. And at the moment when I draw that panel, it's just only a single skin, it's got no thickness to it. So that's what I'm going to add now. So I'm going to get my push-pull and start to push-pull it that way and tell it to be a thickness of 90. Okay. And then I want to offset the front face, okay, so that I can basically create this sort of lip thing here, right, this sort of thickness for my outside frame. Pardon me. Oh, God, I must have the virus. Okay, so I'm going to go to my offset tool, which is this one, and I'm just going to click and pull that in by, I think I've used 40 millimeters on all the other ones. So I'm just going to keep it consistent across this whole model. So I've used an offset of 40, okay, and then I'm going to select the inside face, hit my push-pull, and again, just push that all the way through there to get rid of the middle bit. And there is my external frame for my window. And again, like all good practice with SketchUp, I'll group this now because the next part that I make is going to be one of these internal frames. Okay, and I want to make sure that doesn't interrupt the geometry of the part that I've already made, okay, which is this part. So it's wise to group that. Okay, good rule of thumb with SketchUp is if in doubt, group it. Okay, so I've triple clicked that to select all of the geometry of that part, keeping an eye on the fact that I haven't accidentally clicked anything else. Nothing else is selecting, so that's all good. Right click that and choose Make Group. And that's now its own group. Okay, so I can carry on now and keep making the window. Perhaps before I do that, I'll just bring back my walls by unhiding them. Okay, what I have been doing is I've been, again, just for consistency purposes, on these outer frames of the windows, I've been getting the Move tool and then just insetting them a little bit inside the cavity. And I think I've used 60 on all the other ones. Now that's just for the stylistic reasons, and not all buildings follow the same process. Some windows, for example, will be almost flush to the inside edge, some might even be flush to the outside edge. It all depends on the style of the thing you're making, but that's not an uncommon way to do it, to sort of have the window frame sitting somewhere in the middle of the actual wall cavity. So that's kind of where I've put that. Okay, we shall keep working. All right, so I'm now going to make the internal parts of this window, the two sort of sliding windows, if you like. Again, just for clarity, I'm going to hide my walls so it's easier to see what I'm making on this. Okay, and I need to know where is the middle of this window frame. So I'm going to get a guide, start to drag it. Again, two ways I can do this. I can get the measure of that, which is in this case 1720. And I could do /2, find the middle that way, or as I'm dragging my guide, I can just inference along the top edge there of our frame, and it will eventually hit that little middle point, okay, and it's giving me a circle. So SketchUp will do that. It's got inferencing built in, so any time it's got geometry, where it's got like an edge and an edge, and you drag along, it will actually tell you where the middle of those 2 points are, okay? But otherwise, you can do the / thing. Whichever method you use, that will give you the middle, and there is our middle point. So now, and again just confirming I have already grouped this, so whatever I draw now won't interrupt that geometry, and I'll draw a new rectangle across that span there, okay, which is exactly halfway. So this is going to make the frame for the internal frame of my window. Right, same process again. I'm just going to select that, put push-pull on that, and give it a thickness. Now my outer frame was 90, so I'm going to make this half of that, which is 45. Okay, so it's got a thickness on it now, like that. And now I'm just same process again, just go in and do the offset. And I'll make it a little thinner this time, so I'll use 30. And then push-pull to get rid of that middle bit. And there it is. Now again, if you have any difficulty sort of doing that, if it's playing up and it won't sort of, you know, cut the hole through, again, just you can, you might notice I don't even not notice, I'm using the orbit and the hand tool a lot so that I can get to the view that I need to get to so I can see what I need to work with. So an alternate way to have knocked the hole through that is to push-pull. And then remember, you can come up here and sort of, or actually in this case that won't work, come to think of it, because that's going to give me the thickness of the outer frame. All right, what I need to do is be able to see that thickness of the internal window. Okay, so push-pull this, touch on the back of that thickness there, and it will cut the hole. And again, finally, the fail-safe method of getting that to cut properly is just know the depth that you're trying to cut through. It was 45, okay, so if I get push-pull, start to push-pull, type in 45, and it will definitely do it. Righto, so there's our internal window frame done. Now previously I've been saying how important it is to group things as you make it, alright, so that internal frame now is not yet grouped, external frame is grouped, I can tell because I've got the blue lines coming up, internal is not yet grouped. So I'm going to triple click, again just a little reminder of the double and single and triple click thing. Okay, single click allows you to select individual faces or edges. Double click will grab a face and its exact coinciding edges. Okay, so in this case it's that whole panel just there, and a triple click will grab everything that is connected geometry to that object. Okay, which is all of that. Okay, obviously it hasn't got anything else. Again, I'm just quickly checking to see that nothing else accidentally selected, so that's all good. Righto, and now I could right-click that and choose Make Group. Just whilst we're on this, though, I'll introduce the concept of why you might consider, instead of telling it to be a group, why you might consider making it a component. They're very similar. Okay, the role they play is a very similar thing. They will protect the geometry. Okay, so that if you go to sort of make something else, it won't interrupt that geometry. But there is a potential advantage to make component in this case. So making group would have been perfectly okay. I just might show you the difference with making component. So I'm going to choose this one to be a component. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this demo window 1800. Okay. And there it is. And it looks identical to a group. And it acts like a grouped object. Okay. When I click it, it's giving me the blue line thing. If I double click it, I can get into the mode where I can edit it. Okay. All good. So it looks pretty much identical to a group, with one significant difference. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I want to make a second one of these. All right. So I could just do that whole process again, draw a new rectangle, blah, blah, blah. But I don't need to do that. I can just select that one that I just made a component of, or made a group, doesn't matter, either method. So I can select it. And then I can just use the Move tool. And if I start to click on that and move it, now do take note I'm doing that from one of its coinciding edges. Okay, so where it's touching that bottom frame is where I've clicked to move that. That's going to help keep it aligned as I'm moving it. Okay, as I'm moving that, I'm going to hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC, and that allows me to make a copy. Okay, which is a sort of useful thing to know. Now, by the way, that's got nothing to do with it being a component or a group. You know, any object will technically work that way if you wish to copy it and you want to use the Move tool. That's how you do it. So again, just quickly select it. Grab the Move tool. It's always good to go from a coincident edge, which is what I've done there, and hold down Alt or Option as you're moving it, and it will make a copy. Righto. Now, just for added realism here, I'm just going to offset the position of this window here, and drop it back a little bit. Now, when I say drop back a little bit, I've again used the Move tool just to push that back. I'm using a coinciding edge here, so I've grabbed it from the bottom point, and that just means it's going to push it back so that they're equally spaced across. So it kind of looks a bit more convincing as a sliding window. Righto. Now, getting back to the whole idea of why did I consider making this a component instead of a group? Because so far it just looks like it's working the same way as a group would work. Okay. Well, here's the reason. Let's just say I decide on this window, I'll just bring back my wall so it's clear what I'm looking at. Right, let's just say on this window on this side, I decide I wanted like a middle divider going across the window there, just for a different style window, right? Well, what I can do, I can double click to get into the edit mode for this window, and I will drag a guide just to work out. So I want to put a middle strut sort of halfway through this. So I'm going to drag a guide up until I find the middle. There's the middle point there. Okay. Now I'm just going to put a little pencil. Now again, just really confirming that I'm in the edit mode for this internal window. Okay. And just for consistency purposes, I'll make this also, 30 deep. Okay. Because that's how the thickness I made these other sections. Okay, get my pencil. Okay, put a little section across there, and then that gives me a little piece in there that I can select. I'm going to push-pull that across so I get a middle strut, but if you have a look at the window on the other side here, which currently isn't selected, okay, you can see it's greyed out, all right, but if you remember, it was a copy of this one. This one is a component, and this is the big deal with components. If I now modify, well, let's call this the original, it's going to update the component. Okay, so anytime that component is reused, any change you make to one of them, it's going to update all of them. So again, if I just click out of that now and we have a look, that's now made that modification to this window on this side. So that can be useful for things like this, for example, where you might have a whole bunch of windows you might have in a project and they're all a standard size or style or design or whatever. Make it once, and then if you use components as all or part of that, you can then update one of them and it's going to update all the other ones across the project. So another use for that would be, for example, if I go into this one, and by the way, it doesn't matter which one you work on, okay, which of the components, but I'll do this one. So again, I want to modify it. I'm going to double click that until I can see all the surfaces, and just I've triple clicked there to grab all the surfaces of that thing. All right, you can actually see a clue that this is a component over this side too, because the ghosted out copy of it, okay, is also showing that's selected. And then let's just say I put a different texture on this. Okay, I just want to put something as a demo here, put wood or something on this. So I do it on one and it updates automatically, okay, any copy of that component. Right, so that's one potential advantage to having components instead of groups. Okay, is that you modify one instance of the component and it will modify all of those instances across the project. So I'll show you where that can be handy. That can be very handy for things like internal doors, okay, because they're likely to be just the same, exactly the same dimensions. Okay, again, if I hide my walls, got some internal doors there, for example. Okay, so in a lot of buildings, there'll be a very similar design. So again, you just make one, make it a component, copy it as many times as you need, and then if you think better of some aspect of it later on, you want to change the color, you want to change some aspect of the geometry, it will automatically update all the other ones for you. Okay, so that's just a little overview of why a component might be helpful. But if you think, no, lost there, really know what that's all about, don't panic too much about that just yet. For the moment, the far more critical thing is to understand the difference between groups and not grouping. That's way more important, okay? And once you're really confident with that, then you can start sort of experimenting with the component thing. But just sort of throw that in there because for some folks, they'll probably find that's actually a very handy thing to know about. That's basically it. I don't think I really need to rattle on too much further. The process for the doors is really exactly the same. If I hide the walls again, so right-click hide. The doors are made precisely the same way as I just did the windows. Okay, so if I move that internal part out of the way. Okay, I've just made them in two parts. There's the outside frame and the inside door, okay, which in this case is the equivalent of the inside window. That's all I've done. Minor difference with the internal doors. Okay, so on this front door I've got the frame going right round, okay, which is sometimes common. You'll sort of occasionally see that internal door frame at the bottom of the doorstep. With the internal doors, again I'll just bring my walls back. The only difference there is that you sometimes don't really see that sort of internal frame going across the bottom. And the reason for that is you don't really want to interrupt your floors. Okay, so you have carpet or tiles or floorboards or something, and you don't then want to see sort of a thumping big sort of frame for your door going across the bottom. Actually, some houses will still do that. Some architectural styles actually still do have a panel across the bottom there. Most don't. Okay, so as I just said, there, it really is the same process for making the hole for the windows. I suppose the difference is, and I'll just do one very quickly here. So I'm going to put a door cavity just here, and I'll just quickly show you how you make that frame. Again, I'm just going to do that same process of trying to find where is the middle of this space here. All right, so actually I'm going to make it the middle of the internal room in there so that the door sort of arguably could go into that. So I'm just going to measure across there first, okay, which is 3810. So 3810 /2, there's the middle, okay, and get a guide that lines up. that's it there. Rightio. Now, the standard door height, okay, good standard for that is 2040. Okay, so there's my door height. And the standard single door width is, say, 820. Okay, so they do vary, of course, but I'm just using that to be consistent across this model. Okay, so I'm going to go 820/2 because I'm trying to build this off the center line. Okay, and 820/2. Okay, which is then going to give me 820 across there. Right, yeah, and now I can knock my hole in there. Right, so the walls are grouped, so I need to double click, get into the group edit mode. There's the panel I'm trying to modify, draw a rectangle, okay, and push pull that through to give me the cavity, and there it is. Now, just one little phenomenon with that can be slightly irritating. I'll just show you how you deal with it. Okay. I'll hide my floor. My floor object is a grouped separate thing. Okay. So I can just select that, right click and hide. Righto. So occasionally you'll find that this will happen. I'm just going to delete my guides there. Okay. You'll do a push pull on something that you think is going flush to the floor there. And you'll notice it's left a little panel there, right? So I want to get rid of that because I don't want that to interrupt the original textures and things I had on my floor. So I'm going to take the opportunity to get rid of that. Okay, so again, just checking that I'm in the right edit mode for the walls. I want to get rid of this, so I'm just going to delete that. Okay, and that's gone. Okay, so now I'm back into that same procedure that I was using before to make a frame and then a door. Right, yeah. So I've got it out of group edit mode for the walls, and I'm going to do this same process. Okay, I'm going to draw a rectangle over that space. Okay, push pull that through to give it a thickness. Now, in the case of door frames, they usually do go through to the same thickness. Okay, they go right through. All right, the windows, I made them slightly shorter than the actual cavity. In this case, I'm going to go right through. All right. So again, just to confirm what I've made there, that's what we've made so far. Okay, and I'm going to now do my little offset thing. Okay, so to make the frame for the door. So offset tool, and I think I used 40 before. That's probably thicker than it needs to be, but you get the idea. And then get rid of that middle bit by push pull, and there we go. And then yeah, it's this bottom bit here that's the troublesome thing when you're doing an internal door frame. So I'll just show you how you fix that. It's easy. Just bring my walls back. Okay, so that's the slight issue, as I said, with most, I suppose, contemporary architecture. I suppose it's not all, but most. You wouldn't really have this. That's a trip hazard and all sorts of problems there. Okay, so the frame should go straight down. So how do you fix that? Well, it's pretty easy. On this, I'm still in edit mode, by the way, for this, so I'm just going to get my pencil, draw a little line down there, and draw a little line straight down there. Okay, that allows me then to grab that little front face of just this step part, get the push pull, push it back until it disappears. Now, if it's left with that, okay, where it's leaving that little sort of sill, okay, again, it's easy to fix. I'll just hide my wall so you can see what it's doing. Okay, so it's left that little sill there. Still in edit mode, so I'll just delete it. Okay. Incidentally, it's always a good idea to go through and clean up your geometry. There's a little edge there I don't need anymore, so I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to get rid of that one too. Okay. And by the way, there's really no difference between using the eraser and using the arrow. Okay, to select something and then delete it. All right, you kind of get the same result. Okay, so there's our frame, minus the step at the bottom. So once again, like all good practice, I will triple click that now and group it. Okay, bring back my walls. There's my frame, and now it's a very simple matter of making my door by just dragging a new rectangle across that. And let's see, I don't really need the door to be the full thickness. It wouldn't be the full thickness of a wall. I'll be consistent. I'll find out how thick I've made these ones. I think it was, yeah, it is. It's 40. So going to make this one 40 as well. So grab that rectangle I just drew, pull it through to 40, and that's going to give me a door that I can play with. Okay, so once again, hide my walls so you can see what I'm making. Okay, so we've got that so far, the external frame and the internal door part. And just for good measure, I might put a little bit of a detail on that door to make it look interesting. So maybe we'll do a, an inset on one side or something of it, just to give it a interesting detail. So I might come in by 100 or something, and just do a tiny little relief on that, sort of pull that back by, I don't know, 15 mil or something. So I've got a little detail on that door. And that'll probably do. I mean, if I was being really pedantic, I could come through and do the same thing on the other side, but I'm sure you get the idea. And once again, just group that. Again, this is where I could decide to make this as a component if I wanted to keep copying this door. But for the moment, just for the demo, I'll make it a group. And there it is. And sometimes you'll sort of get the impression of that sort of being slightly set back from the frame. Okay, it can look a little bit more realistic if you do that. Again, it's just about consistency. If you do that on one, just do that on all the internal doors so they're looking like they're the same style. Okay, bring back my walls, and there we are. That's how to make an internal door, and basically, as you saw, it's the same process exactly for making the windows. In this style, that is. There's probably dozens and dozens of different ways that you can make more interesting ones, but these look pretty believable. It's not that hard to do. Really good for when you've got to repeat the same sort of style across the whole thing, and not that traumatic to do. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Give it a go. And remember, as I said, you can do, it's exactly the same process if you happen to be using SketchUp Pro. As you know, the menus are in slightly different positions, the icons look slightly different, but the procedures are exactly the same. Okay, that's simple windows and doors in SketchUp for web. Bye now.